This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Welcome to episode 446 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host, Stefan Butzko, and thank you for joining us as we navigate the absurdity of German football and Borussia Dortmund in particular. Today, we will discuss a heartbreaking 1-1 draw away to VfL Bochum and all its controversies as Dortmund let their Bundesliga lead slip through their hands like fine sand. But the good news is the Black and Yellows have a home match next and Bayern look abject even against the worst team in the Bundesliga, so there's still hope for yet another twist. Here to indulge with me in all these wasted opportunities, Stegemann, shenanigans, and ill-conceived predictions, is Matthias Zug. Hello, Matthias. How are you doing?
There were so many alliterations there. I don't even think I can top what you just did there for the intro. I am doing well, Stefan. How are you?
I'm elated. Joel Embiid won the MVP last night. I'm on cloud 9, and they won, the Sixers did, game 1 against the Boston Celtics, but obviously that's not what we're here to talk about. It's sort of a weird mix of the two teams I'm supporting right now, sitting in Philadelphia, where if the Sixers do bad, I'm like, oh, well, at least I have Dortmund who can win, and then Dortmund screw up, and I'm like, oh, well, at least I have the Sixers, so in the end, it's probably both who let me down, but for now, it's an interesting journey, let's put it this way. And the 1-1 draw, it happened on Friday, it is now Wednesday, and it feels like eons ago, but obviously the annoying part is we still have to talk about it, and I'm actually kind of glad we've waited a little bit, because emotions ran a little high, let's say, right after the game, and for various reasons, of course, but I guess we'll start with what I thought was our best starting lineup currently. We had Guerrero at left back, we had Hummels and Süle in central defense, and Julian Riasson as a right back, and then Julian Brandt ahead of Emre Can and Jude Bellingham in that number 10, if you will, and I think Daniel Malen and Karim Adeyemi are the currently two best wingers or attacking midfielders, and Sebastian Aller being the holding striker up front, if you will. I think is pretty much the best 11 of available players I would have chosen. Some, of course, can argue about Marius Wolf and whatnot, but I think currently, looking at the lineup, I was feeling good going into this game, and of course, how else would it be if I think we picked a good lineup and this is our game to win? Because I saw the pitch in Bochum. It did not look like a horrendous potato field like it did in February. So I thought, okay, we can probably win this game, maybe 2-0, 3-0, something like that. But the football gods had other ideas. Anthony Lodia with a Sunday shot on a Friday, as we would say in Germany, right into the top bins. Very annoying to concede that kind of goal, and of course not without controversy, because I think there was a foul, a shove by who was their striker? Was it Hofmann?
Yes, Hofmann against Can.
Philipp Hofmann against Can to win that header that ultimately led to the goal. Just a lot of very annoying things to go wrong, but Dortmund hit back instantly. Mats Hummels with a brilliant pass to Daniel Malen. A little bit of luck involved that the I think it was Danilo Soares, the Bochum left back, just let it slip through to Malen, and he squared it off. And Sebastian Aller did get a touch, but not decisive enough to make Riemann save it or have it go out of bounds between Adeyemi and the goal, something like that. But Adeyemi was there to slot it home. 1-1 after 7 minutes, and you think, okay, Dortmund have recovered after the setback very quickly, and now you have plenty of time to score another goal. And I also thought that Bochum would definitely have more errors in them. And I mean, truth be told, there were plenty of goal-scoring opportunities. I think this one rebound that fell to Karim Adeyemi, where he just put it wide on a snapshot, I think all still lives rent-free in our heads. So, yeah, Jude Bellingham had a good chance. Donny Malen had a very good chance. Just a lot of high quality looks in the first half. Not as many in the second half, I would say. But it's overall very disappointing that Dortmund did not manage to find a way to win this, because the chances were there aplenty. Matthias, I don't want to waffle on too long. What are your thoughts on this game? Maybe before we talk about the referee. Even though I've already did.
Referee? Why? Something happened? I don't know.
No.
Well, you also can't forget Jude Bellingham had that free header right at the end, too. And Hummels theoretically scored, but obviously he was offside. But again, we will talk about the referee in a minute. It's frustrating because there are a few things. When Danilo Suarez got that booking, I was like, I even tweeted it. Now it's time for Malen to just torch him, because Suarez was kind of their weak link over the last few weeks. He looked really, really bad in previous matches, and as in high form as Malen is, I figured that's just a mismatch they're going to go after, because he's already booked. So he's either going to be more cautious or reckless and get a second booking, which ironically he should have gotten. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But that didn't happen. I was really surprised. I would have thought there would have been like, okay, let's just funnel it a little bit more down that side. Have Malen and a few more one-on-ones against him and see what can happen. And that didn't happen. And I thought that was a little bit of an odd happenstance. Now, I can't really sit there. Yes, I did watch the match twice, believe it or not, because I felt like it was necessarily to watch it a second time and remove the immediate emotion from it. But as we will talk about, emotion in or out, my opinion does not change. Dortmund, you play this match 10 times, Dortmund win it 9 times. I mean, they did everything they needed to do to win except score the goal. Anthony Losilla's goal, he ended the evening with an XG of 0.1. So that says what the chance was of that even going in. Dortmund 2.7 XG versus 0.9 XG from Bochum. Needless to say, if a penalty would have come into the factor there, Dortmund would have been closer to 3.5. They were the significantly better team in all categories. Now, the one category, there are a few stats that I always pick out that I find interesting. Shots on target percentage was roughly the same, 31 to 32%, but Dortmund had 22 shots and Bochum had 13. But the few interesting ones for me were, one, crosses. Dortmund had 34, Bochum 13. And I remember over the years, Stefan, I have said that if a team like Dortmund in that caliber starts pinging in a lot of crosses, significantly more than the opposition, that's usually not a good sign as to which way the match is going. And on top of that, Dortmund also had 85 long balls versus Bochum's 70. So, but Bochum had 33 clearances. I mean, it shows who was on the front foot. If you look at all the key metrics, progressive passes, progressive carries, take-ons, all that kind of thing, I mean, Dortmund were just the significantly better team, but couldn't get that second goal. And again, we'll talk about the penalty or not given penalty separately. But it was really, really frustrating because it was an opportunity squandered to a degree. And sometimes you just have matches like that where you can get a ton of chances and not score. I mean, or not score enough. Bochum had that the week before against Wolfsburg, where they had almost the same XG, and they ended up getting absolutely destroyed by Wolfsburg. So, unfortunately, it can just happen. It's unfortunate that it happened this time, and one thing that somebody did point out on Twitter, and it is an absolutely valid point, is that Bochum has played 1-1 against Bochum, 3-3 against Stuttgart, and 2-2 against Schalke. All 3 matches Dortmund should have won because they were the better side, and those are 6 points, which means had those gone according to the way the play was going and the statistically and all that kind of stuff, and a little bit more luck on Dortmund's side, Dortmund would now be 5 points clear of Bayern at the top. But unfortunately, that's not the way football goes. And so now it is no longer in Dortmund's hands. It is now for Bayern to lose.
Yeah, that is a very unfortunate headline. And I think the road performance overall has been a quell of frustration for Dortmund. And especially for Dortmund fans, because, I mean, first of all, you need to win this fucking derby. There are no two ways about it. The way of fucking around Dortmund did in this game still annoys me to no end. And we can obviously, you said a little bit more luck, but I also think a little bit more maturity would have had a little bit more composure and, of course, defensive structure. All those things would have helped massively. And so Dortmund do have themselves to blame for not capitalizing on the quote-unquote easier fixtures. I know they are all relegation-threatened teams in Dortmund, for whatever reason, historically almost, you could say, struggle against those. But I think these are all missed opportunities, and Bochum is just the latest addition to that potpourri of losing to inferior teams or not beating them. Even though you should. And Chuck It on YouTube has asked, with one away win since February against Hoffenheim, how important will Augsburg away be? And do you think that Dortmund can win against Augsburg if Bayern drop points again? And that is a very valid question. And I wish, obviously, I do think they can win, but will they? Who the fuck knows at this point? Because Dortmund have been just dire on the road when it comes to results. And yes, they have been the better team, as you have been pointed out, but they have also been not quite as dominant as they have been in home games. And now, obviously, that is the beauty of the Westfalenstadion. You can't go and say, okay, we have probably one of the best stadiums and best fans bases in the world and not, have that a positive effect on your home games. But nevertheless, Dortmund A have an amazing road support. And second of all, these wins or these draws were all winnable games, and the Stuttgart one probably the most painful because he literally dropped 2 points with the last whistle of the game. But I honestly thought going into this game against Bochum that Dortmund would take care of business and would manage to find ways to score. Now, obviously, the variance in the sport, since football is a low-scoring game, is always a factor. You can be the best team and create a million chances and waste them all. That happens. It's not new. But still, I'm very frustrated. And again, before we talk about Stegemann and the penalty we absolutely should have gotten, I want to talk a little bit also about the substitutions. I thought it was good to bring on Marco Reus and Yusufa Moukoko around the 73rd, 74th minute mark. For Julian Brandt, who in this game didn't have his best game, and Sebastian Aller, I think, was also a little tired. And you just needed to, a different look. And obviously, Marco Reus created a really great look for Moukoko right off the bat. Really nice combination play through the middle. And if Riemann doesn't have a fantastic save, we can probably just bury it right there. But even more so, I thought the substitutions, we brought in Gio Reyna in the 81st minute for Adeyemi, but then Marius Wolf for Mile in the 88th, and Anthony Modeste also, where you basically bring out the good old Brechstange. And you talked about the crosses, and I think all the crosses that Dortmund and also Marius Wolf lumped into the box were woeful and unproductive, I would say counterproductive even. Because this is the sort of game where I think you need to bring on a Jamie Bynoe-Gittens, someone who can be the guy off the dribble and make something happen in the box, instead of an Anthony Modeste, who is otherwise not gonna do much. Maybe get at the end of a cross and head it home. But I think the percentage of having a successful cross in the box against Bochum is way lower than having a dribbler create something and try to beat them with combination play, especially since they're slow and tired. at this point of the game. So to me, that was also just the wrong approach to close out the game. I was pretty convinced that Jamie Bynoe-Gittens, if he were to come off the bench, would have a positive impact. So I was sad to not see him. Gio Reyna, unfortunately, could not add to his late goal stunners as he has done so often. I think he had one shot in the end from distance, which went just completely over the net. So I think he just wanted to curl it into the far side, and it was a good shot. It was a good look, let's say, but it didn't come off. And I don't know what else to say, but to me the substitutions weren't quite on point in this one. So there is a little bit of criticism for me to level at Terzic and his team, at least from my perspective. I don't know how you see it. You might disagree with me entirely, and listeners might as well, but that's how I felt watching the game the first time, since I did not find the time to watch it a second time.
No, in general, I agree. I mean, Anthony Modeste isn't a difference maker. It's kind of like, throw another body into the box at that point. And that's really where all those crosses then are coming from. It's like, well, let's hit it to the big man and see if he can do a flick on or something like that. I agree. Someone like Bynoe-Gittens would be more likely to pull the Bochum defense out of position.
And I'll be honest, I want to see Dahoud in there in midfield at some point. Because Richarlison is a ball winner, but you can add another playmaker to the mix, which gives more headaches to Bochum. I think there was a report that even Dortmund players have been scratching their heads a little bit against Stuttgart and Bochum that Dahoud hasn't featured, even though obviously Dortmund have made it clear that he will not be renewed. But nevertheless, I still think his skill set in such a game can come in handy. Obviously, at the end, you never know if it really helps or not, but at least in theory, it should.
Yeah, I was kind of sitting there when I saw Gio Reyna come on. I was like, oh, okay, well, I mean, there's, I guess, that late goal because he's done it a few times, other than, the shot you mentioned. Obviously, he wasn't on there very long, but I for the most part, I forgot he was even on the pitch. So it was just, by that point, I would say it was done. Even though, of course, it wasn't. And Bellingham had that open header, a free header right at the end. And that would have been one heck of an emotional way to end the match. And a deserved one, in my opinion. I completely disagree with Thomas Letsch, the head coach for Bochum, who then sat in the post-match press conference and said, we absolutely deserved the point. I could not disagree more. But I also understand where he's coming from. He's trying to get his team going in a very tight relegation fight. Where,
I mean, if you look from his team's perspective, they really rallied hard. It's not like they, had a shitty performance for Bochum standards. So I understand what he's trying to say. Objectively, the game wasn't as close as the scoreline may suggest, but I can totally understand why he said that.
Again, I understand where he's coming from, why he's saying it. I just completely disagree. But obviously he's biased. Duh, he's the Bochum coach.
Well, so are we, Matthias.
Yeah, but I mean, going to the Augsburg, to that question, can Dortmund beat Augsburg? The big difference is Augsburg, when Dortmund play against them, will have literally nothing to play for. They're not going to get relegated. They're not going anywhere. They're just kind of sitting there waiting to end the season. Whereas Bochum, Stuttgart, Schalke, all these teams have something to play for. The Gladbach will have nothing to play for. Wolfsburg definitely does, and obviously we're going to talk about that in a second. Mainz may or may not at that point. And so we'll kind of see. It's still going to be, like I said in the last episode, we could see Dortmund drop points and Bayern gain points and they're top of the table. And then Bayern drop points, Dortmund gain points, they're top of the table. And it could come down to that very final match day and in the final 90 minutes of 35 matches to decide who wins the Bundesliga. And that's, the league lead can change 4 more times from here until the end of May. So it's definitely not over.
Yeah, of course it's not over. Why would it be over? We are 1 point off Bayern, and you've watched them against Hertha Berlin. I'll be honest, I couldn't do it to myself. because I knew how this game was going to go. But from what I read on Twitter, I knew Bayern looked still like the Bayern, that lost to Mainz and struggled mightily against Hoffenheim and whatnot recently. This isn't over because Bayern Munich are not the team right now. I mean, of course they can now win the remaining 4 games. It can always happen. But to me, they don't look like a team that will do that. And of course, on the flip side, Dortmund don't entirely convince me either to be a team that wins out the season. So, a lot of things remain in the balance, and that is a good thing, Matthias. I'm still looking forward to the next game against Wolfsburg, even though I'm also a little bit scared and hope it's not going to be the final nail in the coffin, so to speak. Because Bochum, even though we are their boogie team for a longer time now, I feel like they have had our number a couple of times recently. So I really do hope that we come out with a win against them. But of course, before we talk more about the run-in, I think we have to talk about Sascha Stegemann. And since you are more famous for your rants than I am on this podcast, I will leave that one to you.
Well, I'm a little tired today, so it may not be as ranty. But, okay, I feel like I need to add a caveat now. Because, of course, reports came out that Stegemann and his family received threats. That's not cool. I agree with Aki Watzke saying, with all emotion and passion put into a game, there's no reason to threaten violence against a match official and his family.
That is right.
That's
you should go absolutely through with it, not just threaten, you cowards.
Of course,
no, I'm kidding, of course.
And I mean, I wrote that on Twitter, and I had a few people say, "Oh, he deserves everything he gets." It's like, well, no. Let's. At the end of the day, it's just a game. Okay, let's not forget that.
Yeah, and the penalty needs to be converted also.
Yes. Yeah. But however, that being said, if we look at Sascha Stegemann on the one hand, but also Robert Hartmann, who was the VAR official, on the other hand, this was completely mind-boggling as to why it was not reviewed. In the moment, at full speed, and yes, given Adeyemi's penchant for diving in recent weeks, I don't necessarily blame Stegemann in the first instance to go, probably not. However, that's why we have VAR. And the fact that Robert Hartmann at VAR headquarters said, nah, there's not enough evidence there to say that this was a wrong call. Even though literally everybody afterwards that is an official in any form affiliated with refereeing in the league said, oh, that was a stone cold penalty. The league said it. The referees said it. Sascha Stegemann said it afterwards.
I mean, if you needed any more confirmation that it was the clearest penalty ever happened to not be a penalty, Didi Hamann said it wasn't a penalty.
Well, Didi Hamann's an idiot.
Yeah, that's why. He is the biggest idiot out there.
He's a moron. I mean,
he's a fucking moron. God damn, I hate this guy. Like,
he said
I'm not even in Germany, and he is a pundit in Germany, and his moronic thoughts make it on my timeline on the regular, and by God, this guy is the stupidest fucking pundit in all of world soccer. Please make it stop. Just for the love of God, I do not want to hear his thoughts espoused any longer. There must be someone better than Didi fucking Hamann.
I mean, honestly, we've gotten to the point where everyone's like, Lothar Matthäus sounds pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean, here's just a general rule for German TV. If the player played for Bayern in the 90s, just don't hire him. Because they literally have nothing good to say. So Didi Hamann said some weird stuff before that I just like, what?
My favorite part about Didi Hamann, sorry to interrupt your rant with my rant, but is when he criticized Jude Bellingham for his behavior on the football field. I'm like, buddy, aren't you sitting here because people have to pay off your gambling debt that you have amassed? It's just so very annoying. It's just so very annoying to have this guy opinionate on things and have his takes. They never come from a good place. Just never. I mean, even Marco Rose, when he was a Dortmund coach, was feuding with Didi Hamann. It's just, this guy is just such a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
anyway,
but he's not going anywhere because of these types of reactions. Because we know how TV works.
Exactly.
That's why English punditry for the Premier League has so many idiot ex-players saying things. You know, like Gabby Agbonlahor saying VAR should be conducted by players. They'd get every call right. It's like, oh, shut up. Anyway,
back to our idiotic rants.
Yeah.
And hot takes.
The issue with this was also Manuel Gräfe afterwards said, well, you know, I mean, if Adeyemi hadn't have been diving before, obviously he basically did victim shaming in a sense. You know, defending a very bad call that everybody knew was a bad call by blaming the player who got fouled because in the previous weeks he dived. Like I said, at full speed first instance, I could maybe even see that take. But you have VAR. The fact that it is not looked at. I mean, if we already look at Bochum's goal, where I don't understand that. I mean, theoretically, I thought we're looking at all goals with VAR, but you know, whatever. But this instance here, and I will say the second penalty shout, that would have been extremely harsh if that would have been a handball penalty against Bochum.
Well, it was still a foul on Süle, though.
There was a foul on Süle. I think that is one of those where 50-50. It could go either way. I think
because the play was sort of over already.
Yeah, if Stegemann would have called the penalty, I think it would have stood. By him not calling it, it didn't stand. In that case, VAR said, we don't see something so egregious to make you reconsider that. However, this instant, not the case. Stone cold penalty. It was, I mean... To quote Sebastian Kehl, I mean, it was cowardice to not look at it. And it really, it was, in knowing what's at stake, and this is the problem. This is what drives me nuts. People are only looking at Dortmund against Bayern for the title.
Yeah, it was also Bayern who were robbed.
Well,
because they're now in first place thinking they're the best team while they're not.
No.
They have to battle with this ill-conception.
No, it's relegation fight.
Yeah,
now imagine Dortmund wins that one. That's a point to the good for everybody else in a relegation fight that now also got robbed by this. So the repercussions are significant at both the top and the bottom end of the table. And I don't understand that it wasn't that the VAR team at least didn't say, hey, Stegemann, you may want to take a look at this. Because I think we can all remember the handball with Bochum that was looked at for, somebody told me like 4 minutes to take a closer look at it. To be, is it, isn't it, is it, isn't it, is it, isn't it? And that was not clear cut. This was 100% clear
Wasn't even the box.
No, I mean, it was like, how can that happen? And that's my problem. I'm a fan of VAR. I think it is needed. However, if you're going to have it, use it. And the good thing is this has kicked off the discussion again, should coaches have challenges? Because in that situation, obviously Terzic would have been like, oh, hell no, you are looking at that. Now, Felix Broich went out and said, oh, no, that's not good. That'll add to, more emotion, this, that, and the other, whatever. I don't care what referees have to say about it. Challenges, if we look at the NFL, that's perfect, great, awesome. I think it's an excellent choice that they made when they instituted that. And I think you have VAR, you have instant replay. Coaches should be allowed to go, I think you should take a look at it. Now, of course, you don't have the counter penalty like you have in football, in American football, where say, well, if you get it wrong, you lose a timeout, and timeouts are very important. I mean, it's not like you can go, hey, you lose a substitution. That would be a little bit extreme. But I think one challenge per half for a situation like that, I cannot fathom it. And yes, Stegemann the next day said, oh, I got it wrong. But then he did the thing that drives me nuts, where he says, oh, but we're all just people. Oops, I made a mistake. No, that's why you have fucking VAR. So you don't make the fucking mistake. And how can it be that why didn't anybody say, Robert Hartmann, why didn't you say, take another look at it? And
where was he in the Doppelpass? Where was Robert Hartmann? Because to me, he made the bigger mistake.
Exactly. He's being completely ignored. And just he just gets to coast and Stegemann gets to sit there and take it. And because in situations like that, that's where the VAR says, take another look at this. And if we think about, and I just had to think about the Leverkusen match against Bayern, where twice the referee decided it was not a penalty against Bayern, and it was a dive and a booking twice. VAR said, no, take a look at it. He looked at it and went, nope, both times penalty and obviously not a dive, and took the 2 yellow cards back. And I forget which one of those wasn't nearly as clear cut as this one. And so I don't understand it. Now, and the reason why I bring up the Leverkusen and Bayern one is because, some people are like, well, it's corruption. Stegemann, Hartmann got paid by Bayern. If it was Juve level of corruption in the Bundesliga, then Leverkusen would have lost that match against Bayern. Okay? Bayern get a bonus. There's no question about that. But I'm not going to go that far here just because that's saying that, honestly, you have crooked referee.
It is still amusing, though, that there is a photo of Robert Hartmann accepting a Bayern shirt as a gift.
Yes.
That's just very funny to me.
The funny thing was, I actually had a Bayern fan come at me on Twitter. It's like, yeah, well, what about Bellingham, who should have gotten a red card for kicking what's-his-nuts in the head? I'm like, whoa, first of all, in that match, I think it was Leroy Sané, who had a kick out. Like, well, what about against Hoffenheim where Bayern got screwed? And like, the last group of fans that anybody in Germany ever wants to hear complain about refereeing are fucking Bayern fans. So shut up. I mean, just shut up. We all got screwed was the final comment. I'm like, no, we didn't. No, we didn't all get screwed. Who got screwed in this instant? Borussia Dortmund got screwed. Honestly, Stuttgart Schalke got screwed. Hoffenheim getting screwed, I'm okay with. But, the ramifications are too big. You know exactly what's at stake here. You have to look at that. And to not look at that and then instead give Edin Terzic a yellow card for complaining. And Terzic is not Jürgen Klopp or Thomas Tuchel, or Steffen Baumgart. He is not one who loses his shit. He's not Christian Streich. He's one of the nicer guys on the touchline. And it just compounded it further and further and further. And there were 3 extremely questionable situations, with one of them being egregious, and that's obviously this. I know some people on Twitter said, well, Dortmund shouldn't rely on a penalty. Well, I'm sorry, it's part of the game. If you don't want penalties to be part of the game, just remove them entirely and move on. It would make the difference. It would be the difference. It was the difference for Bayer Leverkusen. Okay? And that's just a fact of the game. Dortmund didn't rely on them. If they relied on them, they would have a 0.7 XG and not a 2.7 XG. So shut the fuck up. Okay? I'm like, no, I will not have that. And having people say, well, good teams win these games. Dortmund's a really good team. Just shut up. Just zip it. I don't want to hear about it. Dortmund should have scored more goals, undoubtedly. But this is a huge goal-scoring opportunity that they were denied to even get. And yes, they would have had to step up and take the penalty. I understand that. There's a chance that doesn't happen, that there's no goal. However, they were completely robbed of the opportunity to win this game at the end. And yes, I've always said, in the NFL or any sport, it shouldn't come down to a last play. You've had the whole game to make something happen, but that's sports. Sometimes it just comes down to one instance, to one play, to one decision, especially when you're talking about something this tight and this important. And so it's completely unacceptable, and I will feel like Dortmund got robbed in this match.
Yeah.
That's not to excuse that they should have scored more goals.
Both things can be true.
Both things can be true at the same time.
So let's just say that it is not only that Dortmund should have scored a penalty here, but Bochum would have been down to 10 with Suarez. This would have also been a booking. So not only that, Dortmund get a penalty, Bochum down to 10. So this would have been a major swing, obviously, for Bochum to come back from that, more improbable than otherwise. Obviously, as we look at the Stuttgart game, improbable does not mean impossible. However, Adeyemi, people are saying, oh, he stuck his leg out, he was searching for... No, he stuck his leg out because he wanted to turn around the defender, and he clearly placed the ball with his other leg because he wanted to control it and either set up a shot for himself or pass it on to, I think, who was better positioned, was it Malen or someone? But either way, had he gotten the turn, had he pulled it off the way he was going for the ball, which at this point looked very promising, Dortmund would have gotten a very big chance. So that's something that was also denied. And this is just very frustrating because I personally would have rather seen Dortmund just score from it than Adeyemi being fouled. And let's be honest, we're very lucky that Adeyemi didn't get injured, because the way that Suarez jumped into him at high speed with, I don't know if it were both legs outstretched, but at least one was, this could have ended in yet another injury. So from all these standpoints, I don't know why they couldn't review it. But more importantly, Sascha Stegemann gaslighting everyone at Borussia Dortmund in the Doppelpass, to me, was the cherry on top. Because on the one hand, Edin Terzic protested too much for his liking for him to receive a booking, but then the next day said, if Dortmund had protested more, I might have reviewed it on screen, is such a blatant lie that I'm feeling sick to my stomach. Because Watzke said afterwards, okay, he apologized, he said they got it wrong, and for us this is over. And I was sort of in the same camp, mistakes happen, we move on, etc., etc. But when he said that in the Doppelpass the next day, saying that had Dortmund protested more, I might have reviewed it. To me, that is a very cowardly lie. He is shifting the blame from him to the victim. And my advice to anyone out there, do not date Sascha Stegemann, because that is a ginormous red flag that he in this situation feels like he needs to lie like this, because no protests in the world at this point, and he was surrounded by Dortmund players left, right, and center, would have caused him to go to the screen. I'm pretty sure the more protest there was, the more he would have been set in his arrogant way to make it a point to not even consider it anymore, which it just would have never happened anyway. So for him to sit there and lie like this is very insulting, and is revealing what a fucking idiot this guy really is at the core of it. Because we can talk about refereeing all we want, but the main problem here is that Germany has a refereeing crisis. That the incompetency of officiating this season and previous season is so blatant that it needs massive reform to save German football and its refereeing crisis from that. Because these people are just terrible. And the misservice or disservice he's doing to all the referees in Germany, be it in professional football, but even more importantly, probably in amateur football, where people read this, oh, we just have to protest more to get the call, cool, we'll do that, is the wrongest message you can send out. And so, to me, that completely disqualified this guy as a person to be a referee, because I think Sandro Wagner was on the zone who leveled, right during the game or right after the game, the criticism at Stegemann for the way he officiated the game, calling him arrogant and just not above board.
And that's Sandro Wagner calling someone arrogant.
Yeah,
just a note. Sandro Wagner.
Yeah, but that's exactly my point, Matthias. That is exactly my point. This is not the type of officiating I want to see. And quite frankly, not the kind of person trying to gaslight us all the 2 days later to, I don't know, shift the blame away from him. Like, what is this even? What am I even supposed to do with that?
The problem is, of course, when you have referees in a Besserwisser-Kultur, which we're both German. I feel confident in saying Germans are know-it-alls.
They are.
Ask
my wife.
Right. Yeah,
and we're being too literal all the time. It's very annoying.
Yes. We're both married to non-Germans. So, granted, my wife is Swiss, so that's like non-German light. I'm kidding. I love you, honey. No,
it's not trouble in this podcast.
Yeah, it's not like she's listening.
No, thank God.
The fact is, when it comes to refereeing in a general discussion, I watch a lot of Italian and English football. And when you look at big matches, just like in Germany, in England, and in Italy, it's always the same one or two refs. It's not like there are 3 or 4 to pick from that the league feels confident in can handle this. No, it's always the same 1 or 2. And this is at a core a general issue that we have in top league football. And then obviously if you extrapolate that to the Champions League Chelsea match or the World Cup, Uruguay match when somebody didn't even know what a handball rule is, it just compounds it to the nth degree. And obviously the more micro you get, the worse it gets, because obviously your pool is more diluted in that sense. I would hope, just like a certain other referee would hopefully never get a Dortmund match again, he who shall not be named, the crooked one, Sascha Stegemann ideally doesn't have to referee another Dortmund match, because it just, like you said, it's gaslighting per definition. And it's just not the truth. And to say, well, if you protest more, well, hell, I mean, how much more can Bayern players protest about every sneeze? I mean, it's that, no, you don't want to encourage more protesting. I mean, hell, I officiated a youth rec league game on the weekend, and I had 14, 15-year-old kids and coaches and parents bitching me out for a correct handball call. So you're creating a further bad culture. And to say something like that, it's disingenuous. Like you said, it's a lie. It shows a lack of character and backbone. Just say, I got it wrong. I got it completely wrong. I should have done better. I'm sorry. End the discussion. Done. Over. But then to double down with bullshit, then you're done. Yeah. However, that still doesn't excuse threats of violence against him and his family.
No, but I just wanted to point out the weird psychological behavior from this referee in the whole aftermath is, to me, yet another talking point why the DFB is promoting the worst people up that refereeing ladder, where I just don't understand what the fuck they're doing. But let's talk about Wolfsburg, because I don't know what the fuck they're doing either, because they're in 7th place, hunting Bayer Leverkusen for what probably will be a Europa League spot. Bayer Leverkusen, of course, also still in the hunt for the Champions League spots. I don't think Wolfsburg realistically can get there, with Freiburg being a whopping 10 points ahead of them, and for Leverkusen, I think it's a stretch to say the least. Them drawing against Union Berlin. felt a bit like nail in the coffin. It's between Freiburg and Leipzig, really, for who gets the fourth spot in Union Berlin, of course. Otherwise, I think it's more or less settled. But that all being said, VfL Wolfsburg are a very dangerous team, and they have only lost once in their last 5 games, which came against Gladbach, weirdly enough. But they did just pull off a 3-0 win against Mainz, who, if you remember, were the second best team in the Rückrundentabelle, second half of the table, after they themselves beat Bayern. And Wolfsburg also won 5-1 in Bochum. Now, granted, Bochum is not playing the same way against Wolfsburg as they play against Dortmund, because it's not a derby, and nobody gives a fuck about Wolfsburg because they are the most irrelevant team next to Hoffenheim. So, it is a very weird matchup, because on the one hand, it's a home game for Dortmund and you expect them to win. On the other hand, Wolfsburg have a very sneaky way to hurt you, and they have, as always, a very good squad together, and can make games very weird for you. But I'm just hoping it's not going to be the case this time around. At the same time, Wolfsburg can also simply go to Dortmund, get shellacked 5-0 and drive home again and be ho-hum about it. So I don't really know what to expect in this game. Matthias, maybe you can help me out here, because I have no idea how to preview a Wolfsburg game at this stage of the season, where, of course, they have improved over their first half performance. But still, they are a midfield team by definition, and yes, they are in the fight for Europe, but I don't know. I don't know what to make of them.
I think at this point we can say Niko Kovac is a better coach than Florian Kohfeldt.
Wow.
But I don't really think anybody kind of expected anything less. Niko Kovac is actually a pretty decent coach. He's proved that a few times. The thing about Wolfsburg, and having looked at the last 2 matches, they've outscored their opponents 8-1 in those last 2 matches, but XG wise it was extremely tight. So that either means Mainz and Bochum are very, very wasteful with a lot of chances, and or Wolfsburg are very efficient with also a fair amount of chances. And once again, 2 things can be true at the same time. So what that tells me is Wolfsburg are open to mistakes at the back, because obviously a high XG allowance for Bochum and Mainz is something that would then cause concern, especially we just saw Bochum, and they really didn't do much against Borussia Dortmund. But at the same time, Wolfsburg had a high XG, which, if you converse that, Bochum, as we saw, are open and you can score against them. And we can't forget, in the XG of 3.5, I believe it was, against Bochum, Wolfsburg had a penalty. So if you deduct the penalty, they had a 2.7 XG. Dortmund had a 2.7 XG against Bochum. Bochum had 2.6 against Wolfsburg, non-penalty XG. So what that tells me is this is a team Dortmund can beat. They can be open and score goals against them. However, they must be careful and be a little more defensively sound than they were in the last few matches. I'm thinking specifically, obviously, Stuttgart. With Bochum, I think overall they did okay. They had a few issues, but overall they were okay. You also can't discount the fact that when a team pushes so much forward because they know they have to win, they become more susceptible to chances on the other end, even though Bochum really didn't have that many near the end. It's a difficult one. I agree with you, Stefan. I think analyzing the matches, this is obviously all 4 matches remaining are must wins, blah, blah, blah. But this is a game where Dortmund most assuredly can score 3 or more goals, because Wolfsburg aren't that great defensively. They have shown that. Now, they could hunker down and park the bus and defend. even though that's not entirely in their DNA in the last few weeks at least. And so it's very hard. I don't know what to make of this Wolfsburg side. They're capitalizing on other people's poor form to a degree. I watched the horrible match between Leverkusen and Union Berlin. That was really bad. And so this, it feels weird. I feel confident in Dortmund because they're at home, and it's a very clear boost. I mean, if you look at the Heimtabelle, Dortmund are very, very good at home in the Westfalenstadion, to nobody's surprise. And so I think that will be that impetus to get them over the line, to be focused, to score goals. I expect a match not dissimilar to Frankfurt, in the sense that Wolfsburg will have chances. The key thing is, just like against Frankfurt, make sure those chances don't turn into goals. Turn that the other way around. Dortmund will have chances, and they just have to score them. And I think they will. So that's my very detailed, masterful analysis of what's to come, because this Wolfsburg team's a really weird one for me to get a hold of.
Well, the truth about Wolfsburg is they are very streaky. They have players themselves that are very streaky. Let's look at Lacroix, who, one of the defenders, or Guilavogui or Bornau, for that extent, or Riedle Baku, same. All in the category of really, really good on a good day, to the extent that they might have been linked with Dortmund at some point, at least in Lacroix's instance, not the other players, but can also be awful, make harebrained mistakes, and same for Castells. He's like just another Frank Baumann type. Oliver Baumann type, sorry, who of course is the Hoffenheim goalkeeper who, has his days, but then also a million errors in between. I'm not a big Maxi Arnold fan in midfield. I think that is a position they can certainly upgrade. A player Dortmund often struggles with is Wimmer, for whatever reason, I don't know. Did we already face Jonas Wind? Or was he a transfer?
I'm not sure.
In the midseason,
I really don't pay that much attention to Wolfsburg.
Yeah, we actually did. In the 2-0 loss to Wolfsburg before the World Cup, it was Van de Ven who scored in the first minute, and then there was counterattack at the very end or so. It was just a very shitty game. But point being is, I hope that Terzic sticks to the lineup he played against Bochum, because it is a very good lineup. It is a fairly balanced lineup. Obviously, there are always things that can be improved, upgraded, etc. But I think for this particular game, you just want more pace again, and Malen and Adeyemi certainly have the speed to abuse Wolfsburg's backline, because I think this is their major weakness. The further Wolfsburg go up the pitch, the more comfortable they are on the ball, honestly. So if Dortmund manage to pin them back and keep them in their own half for the most part, like they've done to, I don't know, say Frankfurt, for example, in a recent game. If this game looks similar, then I'm very confident that Dortmund win this game. Obviously, you need to be a bit more clinical, but luckily, the nets in Dortmund have been a bit more open in the home games than in the away games. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but here's the one thing that I need to emotionally prepare, let's say, younger or newer Dortmund fans, is when you get down to the final stretch of the season, and maybe with 4 games out, we're already at the point. There's something called, I don't know if you want to call it the Meister jitters, but when it really gets into the crunch time and you play for a championship, your teams tighten up. There will be jitters. They will not play as free-flowing as they would on match day 11 or whatever. So this is certainly a factor that we have to consider happening also to this Dortmund team, because there are a lot of players that are not experienced with winning championships. I think if you look at the Bayern's team versus Dortmund's team, very few players in the Dortmund side that actually have won a title, and getting over that hump obviously takes something special, and I do not know if this particular team has it in them yet, because they haven't proved it. Because in order to prove it, you actually have to win the thing. And they had a golden opportunity after last week, and they already squandered the first time, no matter how you look at it. But here's the thing, Matthias, and we talked about it a little bit after the podcast last week. I look at this still as a ginormous chance, because for Dortmund to win a championship would make so much of a difference for the whole consciousness of this team, of this club, just going forward, what it means to play in the Champions League, coming out of pot 1, for example. All these little details, it would just be massive for Dortmund, because to have the argument, palpable, presentable argument that you, in fact, can win a championship at Dortmund is, of course, massive. And also entering the next season with the confidence of being the champions is entirely different as being the team that they closely lost it. Now, obviously, you can take motivation from coming very close but not going quite there, but just having the swagger of a German champion, as we've seen with Dortmund do it twice enter a season, is something else, and is a massive advantage that I want this team to see on top of all the other jubilations that you will, of course, get, and all the joy. So for the short term, I want Dortmund to win the championship for very selfish reasons, because it would make me happy, but also I think in the medium term, there are things to be gained. So I don't need to tell it to anyone listening to the show that it would be very important to win this game, but dear God, please beat these fucking Wolfsburg fucks who, in my opinion, and I don't know where you stand on this, but in my opinion, should not even be a club in the Bundesliga, at least not by the definition of the 50+1 rule and the spirit of it. So to me, it's always even more annoying when you lose to a team like that. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on the whole thing. Now, we also got a couple of questions, and I think one here from Moon8983 on YouTube asking, assuming we've already signed Bensebaini, who else / what positions should we reinforce in the summer to improve the squad? And Matthias, I'll use this question as a beautiful segue, because midfield.
Yes.
Today, there are reports that Jude Bellingham is close to a move to Real Madrid this summer. Obviously, transfer fees and whatnot haven't been discussed, but when Ruhrnachrichten even are reporting that this is legit, it is legit. And on the one hand, losing Jude Bellingham would be a giant blow for Dortmund, because I think he has been a fan favorite. He brought an energy to Dortmund that was missing for a long time. And on top of that, he's really, really good. So losing this kid already, even though I think he still has 2 seasons left on his contract, would be very painful. But on the other hand, I would understand if Dortmund want to cash in or cash out or whatever you want to call it.
Well, it's not just because Dortmund want to cash in. I'll talk about that in a second.
Yes. There are also reports about Mark Bellingham trying to cash in because of some rule. I haven't quite read up about it. I just read the headline, to be honest. But it is certainly a development that hurts, let's say, because losing Jude Bellingham would absolutely hurt. Of course, there is a chance to have a different player in this position who improves our structure in certain moments of the game, certainly, because Jude Bellingham does not have the tactical discipline that a player in this role needs to have, and certainly there are micro aspects to improve, but on the other hand, is such a versatile player with such a skill set that in any case, he is a difference maker, and losing him will de facto hurt you. There are no two ways around that. So, Matthias, to me, I think the midfield position is probably the biggest shout for an upgrade / replacement. But what do you make of these reports concerning Jude Bellingham potentially joining Real Madrid this summer?
Well, we all knew there was a very good chance that Bellingham would be leaving after this season, for a few reasons. One, at the end of next season, he would be going into his final contract season, which he'd be most likely not want to extend, and so Dortmund can get more money now. The report is somewhere between 120 and 150 million, which is an insanely high amount of money that Dortmund can then reinvest in other players. The situation with his father is his agent. As of October 1st of this year, FIFA has a new rule that every agent or everyone acting as an agent that negotiates contracts and earns money off of said player contracts has to be a licensed FIFA agent. Now that previously, family was excluded from that. Some leagues didn't have that. The MLS didn't have that. I know that very personally, actually, that people who didn't need to be a licensed agent to be an agent for players in the MLS. And so they're kind of tightening that loophole because obviously that opens things up to corruption, lack of regulation, all those kind of things. I know it's FIFA, but still, to have some structures in place. And Mark Bellingham is not a licensed agent. If he gets the deal through that's being reported by multiple sources, he would personally earn about 3 million euros. If it happens next season, he will earn nothing because he will not get licensed between now and then because it takes a while. And so and the deal will be less money. So obviously there'll be less of a kickback for him, even though transfer fees don't tend to be the big earner for agents. It's more player contracts and wages. Be that as it may, there is that personal component. And I'm not going to scream, oh, that's so corrupt. I mean, it's 3 million euros. I don't know about you, Stefan, but I could use 3 million euros. And to say, well, if we wait 3 more months, then we're not going to get 3 million euros. That's kind of a big deal. Plus, it's Real Madrid. It's not Liverpool. It's not Manchester City, which is kind of interesting. And I know would upset Barcelona and Atleti, unfortunately. But be that as it may, that is a huge issue for Dortmund because, when Bellingham came in, you kind of looked where he could fit, kind of that box-to-box role at that time or around that time frame. Emre Can kind of being a box-to-box player. He's no longer that. I think Emre Can has found his spot. It's kind of that kind of more halfback type position that drops between the two central defenders, and he's really done well there. You have Salih Özcan, who's a completely different type of player. Other central midfielders, Brandt's a different type of player. You need that kind of dynamo. But if you have 120 to 150 million euros, then given how well Dortmund have made transfers in the last few years and their scouting, I am confident that they will find someone. And it may have to be a Moneyball type approach that you recreate Bellingham in the aggregate because he's a generational type talent. It's going to be hard to find exactly him, but you can find maybe 2 players that are close enough to him that you can also have some rotation. So, because Bellingham plays a lot of minutes, it's a lot of miles on 19-year-old tires. And so that's the big one that Dortmund have to take care of. I agree. I mean, saying, assuming Dortmund signed Ben Sabaini, I know the reports are very high linking that move. But nothing has been done yet. Ben Sabaini said he wants to leave. So I'm still not 100% sold on that transfer. But left back's a very difficult position to fill. And I know for a fact it can't be Rafa Guerreiro. Just can't. He's proven it too many times that he's a defensive liability more often than some other players are. Very interesting, these odd comments recently also that Jadon Sancho has been making, and all of a sudden there's a link between Sancho and Dortmund. I don't see that happening. I don't know where he would fit. I mean, at this point, he wouldn't displace Man or Adeyemi. So I think left back and central midfield, and depends on what happens with Mats Hummels, but maybe another central defender for depth. Those would be the areas I would most like to see.
Yeah, most
Dortmund
definitely. We need
invest.
another central defender.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I know before the season we had talked about someone like Amos Pipa. I forget off the top of my head where he landed, but he did land somewhere. But kind of more that. Someone who doesn't expect to play all the time, because Schlotterbeck, Süle, that is the de facto starting center back pairing. But someone who can step in and the drop off isn't too extreme. So maybe a young one, or a veteran who kind of understands his place in the world, so to speak. But ideally, you just re-sign Hummels and then still sign another central defender.
I
because
think
Koulibaly is not it.
4 is better than 3.
Koulibaly's not it right now. Correct. And then you can sign that younger prospect who's more developed than the other younger prospect that Dortmund have in their second team.
Yeah, I mean, midfield is an aspect that we need to find anyway, because I'll be honest, Moderhut is quitting or being quit. And Jude Bellingham, to me at least, has a lot of qualities, but he's never been the absolute playmaker. Now, obviously, ideally, we'd just sign Ilkay Gündoğan and that'd be the end of that, and that'd be very easy. But honestly, I do think we need a number 8 that really can break lines with his passing, because Jude Bellingham can't quite do that. And I don't know if you want to put Julian Brandt in that position long term. I feel like he is even better a bit higher up because of his scoring threat. So there needs to be a player of that caliber in that position, but they are very hard to come by. And I personally do not have a clear and obvious replacement for that position that pops to my head. Also, not because I'm not watching as much football around the world as I used to. I mean, I was just talking to a friend back in the day. I was starting my day with either Australian football or J-League, and then I would progress to the second division in Germany or Eredivisie, and then I would watch Bundesliga, and when that's done, it's Primera División, and when that is over, either Argentinian or Brazilian soccer. So fun times back in the day, but sadly I do not have the time to spend a whole Saturday or Sunday like this anymore. So quite honestly, I just don't have the overview right now to see what good players are out there. I also don't watch second division football because if I remember correctly, when we signed Gündoğan, I mean, I think Nuremberg were in the first division, but they just had been promoted or something like that.
Yes. Yep.
So he did originally start out in the second division, and that's how I assume Dortmund scouted him. Same with Moritz Leitner, who was playing for 1860 and then moved to Augsburg when Augsburg were also still playing the second division. So these are the kinds of players to maybe look at, because I would love a long-term player for that position who is maybe a little younger and that you can build into the squad. Because let's face it, no matter who you sign, it is the heart of the midfield, and the guy, whoever will be stuck in there, will be absolutely crucial for our success. And ideally, as you said, there's more than one player that Dortmund could rely on, because I hate the idea of thinking, oh well, player X is injured now, basically our entire ball progression is in the mud. One player I do think who can be the second option there is actually Rafael Guerreiro, and the reports of him in the end actually getting an extension make me optimistic if this is the plan. Obviously, you can stick him at left back if the need is there, but ideally you find someone else to play left back and have Guerreiro as number 8, because while he will still be a defensive liability no matter where he plays on the football field, at least from a playmaking perspective, that scenario makes a lot of sense, and I don't know if Dortmund are able to find someone better in the medium term. So maybe he will be the Jude Bellingham replacement for next season in the short term. I don't know, but this is a scenario that could happen.
I like that scenario. It makes sense. He knows the club. He's comfortable there. He's obviously proven how good he can be in that position already twice this season. When I say defensive liability, obviously positioning defensively, his hustle back isn't great, and he can't head the ball ever. But his attacking third counter pressing is actually really good. So I think if you move him up into that 8 and a more progressive, you kind of you accentuate his strengths and you kind of protect him against his flaws to a degree. And so that I really like. A quality left back signing, you put Guerreiro in there, and then you sign someone for the future in that type of role, and you then probably still have 100 million euros to spend, where you can add some depth in some key positions and just have extra money, honestly, as well, and maybe upgrade 1 or 2 spots. I like that. I think Stefan Buczko is going to be the new sporting director, or at least assistant to Sebastian Kehl moving forward.
I don't think so at all, but this is sort of my way of thought, because the only reason if you would extend with Guerreiro, it would be for that position, to be honest. And he has shown, especially against shitty teams in the Bundesliga, I think he is an excellent option. Now, do I want him to play in that position against Bayern Munich when you have to do more than just play Hollywood passes? I'm not so entirely sure, but the thing is, he has played left back for so much, and he has very sporadically played as number 8 for Dortmund, that certainly with more chemistry and more playing time in that position, he can of course also just improve from there on out. But that being said, you cannot ever rely completely on Rafael Guerreiro, because he's also very injury prone. So if you expect him to play the same amount of minutes as Jude Bellingham is doing this season, with what looks to be an ailing knee injury, I don't think you will win that bet. So there definitely has to be someone else, and obviously I would prefer a young number 8 that you can groom into that spot over a longer time, that can build chemistry, that become a figure of identification. Because let's face it, getting someone that is good enough to appease my standards for the number 8 position means to have someone too good for Borussia Dortmund almost. These players would then move on to leave to an absolute world-class club, like it has happened with Nuri Sahin, like it has happened with İlkay Gündoğan, and so on and so forth. So it's very tricky, because if you have the perfect number 8, you do not have the perfect number 8 and have to replace it. There you go. Anyway, there's one more question I wanted to just ask you casually and get your thoughts on this. Mike Sykes Blythe at Biscuits VGC on Twitter asks, what do you guys think of the rumored plans to hold the Champions League final in the United States? It's yes. Since you are a resident of that country.
Well, you need to follow me on Twitter. I would have given you that answer already. Are you out of your fucking mind? Sorry, not you, listener question, but a Champions League final in the United States? No. You want to play the FIFA Club World Cup in the United States? Yes, be my guest. If you want to play a meaningless Super League type thing, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
But meaningful European Cup final? Absolutely not. I mean, you are robbing the fans of those two clubs from the opportunity of going to it, because it's already going to cost a lot of money. It's already going to cost a lot of time. You take vacation, but then you go from maybe I don't know, a 200 euro round trip Eurowings flight and turn it into a 2,000 euro Lufthansa flight to then watch it where? Dallas? LA? Not to mention the stress it puts on the stress
Stadium.
Newark. Yeah.
Welcome to the Champions League in New Jersey.
In New Jersey. Yes. Be careful. You may get mugged. And then the stress it puts on the players with travel time and time to, it's an idiotic, asinine, stupid idea that was even like just floated in the ether. I honestly don't think UEFA is going to do it. That would be like, wow, you are insanely stupid. Not putting past them doing stupid things, obviously. Corruption is as rampant in UEFA as anywhere. But that would be one bridge too far, I think. That would be crazy. It's already bad enough that some other leagues have sold their soul for certain cups to Saudi Arabia or something.
I'll be honest, if Leipzig win the cup and Bayern win the Champions League, I'm sorry, win the German league, then North Korea is a good host country for the DFL Super Cup.
North Korea, Tehran, I hear they're lovely this time of year. No, but again, if it's a meaningless super cup or super league, super cup, fine. That doesn't really bother me because unless Dortmund's in it, I don't watch it anyway. But a meaningful cup final, that's just a bad idea. And I live in the United States. Obviously, I would be like, hey, but guess what? I wouldn't even be able to go because of flights and hotel and kids and life and all that stuff.
It would also be completely unaffordable, probably, wherever it is.
No.
Especially if it were in LA, you would not be able to
forget it.
Pay for it.
Forget it. It'd be turning in. it's already expensive enough, but it would turn into the Super Bowl type costing situation where, the overwhelming majority of people who go to the Super Bowl are not fans of teams that are in the Super Bowl. And you would get to that point. It's already to a degree in the Champions League final, but it's not that extreme. No. This needs to be for the fans, not for the customers. If you want customer football, you go watch the Premier League. Whoa.
Zing.
Sorry. I was just thinking Manchester City against Arsenal, and I watched that game. I'm like, wow, that is a dead atmosphere. A lot of customers in the empty hat. So, moving on.
Do you call it empty hat, or did I just hear that?
Yes, no, I said empty hat.
Anywho, I think this is this podcast episode has run its course. So, Matthias, thank you again for coming on to rant, let it all out for a good.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was. It was
fun. All things considered, it was a lot of fun. It's always fun with you, Stefan. Thank you.
Yeah, I really do hope that when we come back next week, there are I don't know, more twists, and we can report back from the top of the table and can game out and plan out how we're gonna give it up this time in overly comically stupid fashion, either Dortmund tripping over themselves or a referee playing the I don't know, the hero I was gonna say, or anti-hero. Anyway, this was fun despite this not being a good week and despite the Jude Bellingham rumors. But you know what you're gonna do. We'll still try to look at the bright side and try to make this as much of a title race as it is, because it still is. So I'm sure the next weeks are going to be very interesting. By the way, we haven't really talked about Bayern's opponent. Don't they play Bremen, who just lost to Schalke in the most embarrassing way? Surely Werder Bremen needs to bounce back from that, right?
Yes. Unfortunately, the record against Bayern does not suggest that.
Yeah, but it's funny because Werder Bremen do have a history, let's say, with Bayern Munich, and I'm pretty sure the spirit of the club certainly would absolutely love to ruin Bayern and yet another championship for them. So maybe these are the ghosts that we can call from the old Bremen days when they were the first or second force in German football.
Yeah, they won the double 19 years ago, so it's been that long.
Yeah,
but yeah, it would be obviously we would love it. But I don't think I think Niklas Füllkrug is out as well. So
come on.
That's the last report I saw. I haven't been tracking it that much, but that's a big loss. That's a big loss.
Well, Marvin Duksch, go do it. Anyway,
Marvin Duksch shoots Borussia Dortmund to a Bundesliga title. Has always known it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the end, if we have to rely on Schalke or Leipzig, I also do not care. I'm completely fine with that. So as long as we get to win it in the end, I don't care how it happens. Even if it happens on a final match day and 1. FC Köln are the ones to bring Bayern down, maybe that's how it goes. I have no idea. So yeah, we'll in any way we'll be back next week to talk about the next set of shenanigans awaiting us this weekend. So until then, as always, thank you for listening and goodbye.